Hi, my name is Anthony Green, and today I'm going to talk to you about some features included in MyLanguageMod for VB.NET. In other videos, I've shown how useful it is to be able to paste JSON fragments directly into your code, or dynamically generate JSON documents when calling REST APIs. To go the other way, when you need to process JSON you've received, you can use pattern matching, a concise declarative syntax for examining data based on its shape. I've modified the classic select case statement with a new keyword, shapeOf, indicating that instead of testing a value against a list of expressions, I'm going to test the shape of that value against a list of patterns. So, let's say I wanted to look at the first name in my JSON blob. I type this JSON-like pattern, introducing a new variable. I'm then going to write that variable to the console. This new variable infers the type of JToken, but I can also explicitly type it as string if I need a more strongly typed variable later. Of course, it's often easier to start from an existing JSON fragment and filter out the data you need. I can delete data I don't care about, and introduce individual pattern variables for values I want to extract, like first name and last name. I can also test against constants to constrain the data that I want to match, such as only matching persons who are alive. I can also templatize the entire pattern at once. Let's run this. Stepping through the code with the Visual Studio Debugger, I can actually see the various helper methods being called to evaluate the pattern. I can see the return values of those helpers to understand why a match succeeded or failed. Here it says that a call to isNotNull returned false. Let's look at the data. In this case, the pattern capturing the spouse value failed because spouse is null. By default, patterns never match null values. I can add a question mark to my pattern to indicate that this value is optional. Rerunning the code, I see that the pattern matches and execution enters the case block as expected. And all captured values are also as expected. Next, let's examine these features in a slightly more practical example. I have here an ASP.NET Core Web API called Shapes API. It's simply a service that returns a randomly generated elementary shape every time it's invoked. Circle, ellipse, triangle, square, rectangle, and right triangles with mostly random values for their respective key parameters. Let's run it. As expected, refreshing the page generates a new shape with new random values. Now we have a data stream. Let's switch over to some code that's going to consume this data. This is a simple console app called the Area Calculator, and it's going to call our Shapes API and generate areas for each of the shapes returned. You may notice that unlike the API that's serving up the data, which was using Newtonsoft JSON.NET types, this API is using the .NET 6 JSON document and JSON element types. Both the JSON literals and pattern matching features are pattern-based, no pun intended, meaning the language and compiler aren't coupled to a specific API, but rather a pattern of methods to look for that allow them to work with any types that satisfy that pattern. In this case, I'm referencing a NuGet package with the runtime extensions required for the system.text.json types. This package also includes the extensions for the JSON node types, so this code works equally well if I targeted the Nodes API instead. The Nodes API is similar enough to the JSON.NET, so let's move forward with the JSON document and JSON element API to showcase the versatility of the feature. You can see here that I've typed one of my variables as my shape type enum. Pattern matching isn't limited to JSON data types and their VB equivalents. In this case, the pattern is testing to see whether the string that's returned from the API is shaped like a member of the shape type enumeration. This works for enums and also for any type that has a triparse method, such as GUID or your own custom types. Running my code, you see that the app calls the RESTful Shapes API every iteration, deconstructs the JSON payload, and computes the areas. You've now seen how JSON pattern matching makes it easy and intuitive to declaratively test and extract data from data structures which model JSON payloads. For more details on the feature and how you can install my mod to try it out for yourself, check out my blog using the links in the description below. Happy coding!